Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Vultures Row podcast. I'm your host, Joey Bonsanti. Episode number 20 of
All right.
this journey with us. So we got Tony Vegas, Pat Winters. Happy 4th of July. It's coming off the long weekend. It's been a little bit since we've dropped some content. So how we doing, fellas? Tony, I'll start with you today.
Doing good, man. We're getting closer to training camp. We're within the month. I believe it starts late July. So I'm just looking
We're like
forward to.
10 days away.
Is it 10 days away?
From rookies reporting,
report, yeah. I just can't wait to see the first Zach Rosenblatt tweet of Justin Fields being 7 for 10, Garrett Wilson with 2 touchdowns, all that good stuff. The Twitter feeds are going to start picking up. I'm going to have stuff to tweet about again. It's going to be great. And we're all going to be tan. It's July. I'm feeling good, man. Let's friggin' do it.
Pat?
I'm good, man. Summer's kind of flying by because of this shitty weather, but other than that, pretty good. Yeah, like very excited for training camp to start, and it's kind of funny too because like then we'll get excited for preseason, and then you realize the preseason is just totally boring. But let's get the preseason first, right? So
Exactly. We analyze literally any little thing, like you just said, Tony, from completions to running attempts or anything like that, and then we just pray and hope and cross our fingers that there's no serious injuries. It's always kind of my least favorite part of the year, July. So, but let's not talk about that. Let's get into what we're going to talk about today. We're going to continue the docuseries. We're doing running backs. I think we only have a couple of groups after this. The running game was not great last year. I'll leave it at that. I mean, came in last in a decent amount of categories, and we're going to have a similar run group this year. I mean, we're going to have Brees, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. We'll see if we carry up fourth running back or not. Justin Fields is going to be a big factor in this running game. Looking ahead to this year, comparatively to last year, Pat, what do you think? What do you foresee this running back room looking like heading into 25?
I think there's a lot to discuss. I think really the conversation centers around Brees, obviously. Needless to say, it's a career year for him for so many different reasons. I mean, all the offseason noise, the massive disappointing decline last year, and also it's a contract year for him. So Brees, from a football standpoint, again, I don't know him personally, but I would probably imagine that he has the most adversity in front of him than he probably ever has in his football career. And I was somebody who was extremely harsh on him this offseason. So, but now I'm starting to choose to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit to a degree because I really want to see him shed of the Nate Hackett, Todd Downing offense, along with Aaron Rodgers not being here, even though he was like a supporter of Aaron Rodgers, I believe. But in hindsight, he had like a lot working against him. He didn't get the touches he should have had. One thing I'm skeptical about with him, though, that, I'm curious to see what you guys touch on. Like last year, like it just felt that, I don't know if it was a scheme standpoint or it was him physically or what was going on, but like he just lacked that home run hitting ability that we saw in years past. Like he looked more explosive his coming off of his ACL year one than he did last year, which was concerning to me. And I just felt at least the first 2 seasons for the most part, you just felt that he could hit a 70-yard run from anywhere on the field, and he kind of lacked that last year. So, but that being said, I think he has everything in front of him to have a monster season. Number one, he has on paper a very good offensive line in front of him, which really has been set up to have that identity that they're going to have this elite line, especially in the run game. He has Justin Fields next to him, which we'll touch on a little bit more, but that has to take pressure off of him. And also just probably bring some sort of element to the run game that we've never seen as Jets fans. It should, in theory, open things up for him. And number three, like this, like I talked about before, like the scheme and play calling can just only go up from here, from where it was. Like it has to, right? So I think when you factor those three things in, and I'll let you guys touch a little bit more on Brees too, but I just think that when you put all those things together, like it has to have a good year, right?
Yeah, and I think you're right. It all hinges on him. I do want to see if it's going to be more of a committee. I look at last year. They came dead last. Them being the Jets in attempts last year. It was 363, which ranked 32nd in the league. To give some perspective on that, Saquon Barkley had 345 rush attempts alone. So the Jets as a team only had 363. That's not the greatest look. I think Brees will get a lot more burn this year. Hopefully that results in more yardage, maybe getting him that 1,000-yard season and maybe closer to the double-digit touchdowns. But Tony, I'll pass to you to give your thoughts on some of this as well.
Yeah, I think the coaching was the number one thing last year. I don't know how much like blame to put on Brees versus the coaching staff, just because it was so predictable. I mean, if you're running the ball that few times, you know when a defense knows when it's coming, and if not, it's going to be a 5-yard out route to, you know, Alan Lazard or Devontae Adams. We ran this weird box offense where, for whatever reason, they didn't trust Brees in short yardage situations, and instead they would throw these out routes that barely worked. So I think with the addition of Justin Fields and specifically his running ability, mixed with hopefully a more creative, offensive scheme, I think it'll create a lot more opportunities for Brees just through the unpredictability of like defenses not knowing when it's coming. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's hard to run for 70 yards if a defense knows you're going to run a halfback dive on that play, right? I mean, yeah, it was shocking the amount of times he went down on first contact. That's where it was like disappointing, where he wasn't like breaking tackles. But addition of Justin Fields, the offensive line. I mean, Tyron Smith was brutal. So you get a full season of Olu, and then you replace Morgan Moses with Membu, who's supposed to be a good run blocker. I think he's going to improve, and I do think it's going to be a little bit of a committee, but he's going to be the number one back, and specifically in pass catching situations. I'm predicting a breakout year. Plus, it's the last year of his contract, dude. They're going to run him into the ground because why not? He's the best back on the team. He's probably not going to be on the team in 2 or 3 years. He definitely won't be, in my opinion. So I think they're going to really utilize him and try to run him into the ground a little bit, and probably draft his replacement next year. That's really what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think we've all seen the blueprint for Brees to be an elite back in the league. He needs to touch the ball over 20 times, and he needs to be utilized heavily in the pass game, right? When both of those things are happening, he's effective. And, to touch on the committee thing a little bit, like, I'm not buying it too much. I really don't think Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen are going to be on his heels as much as it's been stated. Like, I think Braylon Allen has the potential to be a really good RB2 in this offense and take a little pressure off of Brees, but I just think due to the lack of receiving weapons on the team, it's not going to be a situation where Brees is on the sideline while another back is, in a lot, at least. I think they're going to run a lot of 2-back sets. I think they're going to put Brees out wide more. Like, they really can't afford offensively to keep him off the field right now from a weapon standpoint. So that's why I don't really, maybe if it's a running back by committee approach, it's where something is Brees is more in the pass game than actually him just being taking a breather on the sideline.
Yeah, and I mean, you make a good point about. I think I can't 1,000% back this up, but I'm pretty sure after Brees caught that touchdown last year against Tennessee, I think that was his last receiving touchdown of the year, which is funny because it was so early on in the season that you'd be like, all right, we should probably do that more, and then they just turn away completely from that. So I could totally see, hopefully, Engstrand turning to that more. I want to touch a little bit more on the offensive line. I know where this is about running backs, but PFF did just come out and say that the Jets' offensive line is currently ranked 9th heading into the 2025 season. That obviously complements the running game and what it could be heading into this season. I think that's really a safe spot to put them, because if Membu lives up to his potential, if Olu lives up to his potential, we kind of know what that interior looks like. This could really be a top 5 unit, making the run game probably a top 5 unit as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how each of those groups complement each other. If everything looks the way it should, there's no reason why Brees shouldn't have like 1,100 yards on the ground this year, and Justin Fields shouldn't be running for 500-600 yards as well.
Yeah, Justin Fields is going to be like the RB2 on the team. I think. Like, I love Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. I think he's solid, but Justin Fields, you're going to have more motion too. Like that's key, dude. It was a statue offense where nobody was moving. So let me like paint the picture here. It's like an obvious running situation. There's no motion, nothing to confuse the defenders. minimal communication needed on the defensive side of the ball when you're playing the Jets last year because nobody was moving. Like Downing came in, they had a little bit of motion, and it was like, holy shit, they could actually move pre-snap. I just feel like Engstrand's scheme, and he's a younger offensive coordinator. I think that's going to be the difference. It's going to be a lot more like misdirection. Like you don't know if Justin Fields is going to keep it or he's going to hand it off to Brees. There's going to be options. I just think that they're going to run like that, like early Lamar, like Greg Roman type offense with Justin Fields here, which is only going to help Brees. I mean, and whoever's in, it's going to be great for the running game of the Jets next year. I mean, at the end of the day.
The run game is ultimately is what's going to be the determining factor if they're going to have a successful season or not. I mean, you bring up Justin Fields, right? Like, can they be a poor man's, not even like a poor man's, but considering how elite they are to a degree, they are like a poor man's Lamar and Derrick Henry, right? Because if they can, that's what this is ultimately going to be the biggest weapon on the offense, right? So, and that'll be like the catalyst of them having a better season than they've anticipated. So, I think that's what they built this team around. That's what they built this offensive line around. That's why they drafted Armand Membu over a tight end, right? Like they want to be this running team. And, like I said with the committee, like I'm not buying it too much, but like I think maybe it'll start like with the committee, but then if Brees really takes off and everything's flowing well, maybe he'll just kind of, feed into that true bell cow role. But I think the problem with the committee approach, too, in my opinion, is that Brees is kind of like a do-it-all. I know he can be a good receiving threat, and he's kind of like a scat back to a degree, but he's really big. Like he's more of a do-it-all RB1 all-around back. And then you have like two north-south runners in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, right? They're very similar, so they don't have that like true scat back. Like Brees can be one, but he's more of a do-it-all. And that's why I think everybody's talking about the committee with, comparable to Detroit with Montgomery and Gibbs, but they're different players completely, and they don't really have that yet. So that's why I think they really might just be more leaning into Brees than anything else.
Yeah, I think another thing when you look at, you talk about the committee, and I'm looking at some other stats that I've written down here. 31st in rushing yards per game at 91 yards. They ranked 31st in rushing first downs, which with 83, like that number next year is going to go up so much just from the pure fact that they're going to QB sneak it on 3rd and 1s. They're going to bring out these big jumbo sets and try to, run it down your throat with Braylon Allen and Justin Fields. And, maybe you'll see some play action. I have no idea, but those numbers I feel like are going to go up, especially when you look at just the landscape of last year, like you said, Tony, where there was just, you knew there was a statue back there, unfortunately. So as much as I'm trying not to talk about Justin Fields, I feel like he's playing a massive part in this discussion because of what he brings to the table. He could literally come in second on this team in rushing yards behind Brees Hall.
Well, when you had your pod with Hembo, right? What was the stat about Justin Fields? Teams with Justin Fields as their starting quarterback, they're always a top 5 rushing team, right?
Yeah,
3.
Yeah,
top three
Top
rushing
2, I
team.
think. I think it's Lamar and Fields,
right? Like it's they're almost guaranteed to be a very good running team in that aspect. So I guess we'll see what happens in that regard. But yeah, I just think from a personnel standpoint, I really wish they had a more true receiving scat back and not really like somebody to really complement Brees rather than I just feel like they have 3 big backs.
Yeah,
in that regard.
Yeah.
So
I see what you're saying for sure. I mean, I'm talking about some of these numbers. Where do you guys think ultimately that they land? Let's just say yards, attempts. Do you feel like they're jumping up to the middle of the pack? Do you feel like it's going to be a top 10 unit? What do you really feel by the end of the year that we're looking at this running unit?
Is this Justin Fields included or just running backs?
Yeah, anything rushing, yeah.
I would say they're definitely going to be top 5 attempts. In attempts, they're going to be top 5 in yards. I see Brees, we talked a little bit on the Sunday Money episode, but I see him having over 1,000 yards, just backing into the math of attempts and his yards per carry, right? I see him in, again, if he stays healthy, having is it unreasonable to say 1,700 combined yards from scrimmage? Like, that's what they need for the team to be successful this year. I think something in the 1,100 yards rushing 700, 700 yards receiving. Maybe I think he had like, in a peak year 2 years ago, he had 70 catches, right? Like maybe can he get 55 to 70 catches again? There's again,
I
he
want to
has to
pose a
be.
question to you guys real quick. What would it take for Brees Hall, like total yards? We'll just say total yards. What would he need to have in order for us to franchise tag him? Because
I
using
think
that
that goes
franchise,
into the
it's like a
question as a
valuable
whole.
thing.
Well, what is the franchise tag sitting at right now is the question, right? So,
Would it be like 10 mil? I could be totally wrong.
no, I think it's. Let's take a look, but I honestly think that he's a very prime candidate for the franchise tag, regardless, because at the end of the day, that's a 1 year deal. You're probably getting one more prime year out of him, maybe two. They could play the franchise tag game as long as they want with him, and that's really
13
the
million.
recipe right now with running backs outside of Saquon and Derek. The really elite ones. So, yeah, I think he might be franchise tag regardless because you have to replace him. And how do you replace him? Are you going to draft a guy in the third round and roll with Allen? And that doesn't feel like team building. From year one to year two. Obviously it depends on what he does this year, but
I don't know though.
Yeah,
Is
I
team
mean,
building $13 million on a running back next year?
for a
13.6 is
1 year
the
deal,
franchise
but
tag.
for a 1 year deal, when they're going to have a ton of cap space.
I think it all. Yeah, I mean, that gets into a bigger discussion of what does the team look like after this year, and is it even worth doing that? Is it even worth spending the money? I mean, if he rushes for 1,200 yards and has 10
Then
touchdowns,
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah, I think it's all depending on that. But I mean, we're gonna have to see how it plays out. I agree with you. His attempts are going to go up. I mean, they may double. Seriously, I mean, maybe not 400, but they're going to go up a significant amount. I mean, from 209, what he had last year. So I'm going to say at least 100 more attempts for him, which means he should honestly really come in around 1,100 yards. Honestly,
I'm glad you brought up the Titans game too, because I think that from a running back usage perspective, that was the most positive we saw it all season, because that was probably Braylon Allen's one of his most effective games.
Easily.
And
That was his best, yeah.
they were using all those two back sets, and they were using him out of the backfield, and they were receiving. He was a receiving threat, and I think that's the stuff that they're going to have to go back to a little bit.
yeah, no, for sure. Tony, were you going to say something? I didn't want to cut you off.
So
I
what
just
do we
saw
think
I
he's
saw you
going to
perk
have?
up.
Prediction right now. Let's go running back by running back. What do you think the stats are going to be for Brees, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis? You could do receiving yards for Brees too.
I get a little from a broader. Before I give this, I get a little scared about are we are we just shooing in that this is going to be a complete? And I know we keep saying they're going to run the hell out of the ball. What if it's not as heavy as we think? That could be kind of
I just
after this.
doubt it. I
But
mean, they signed
I
a
don't think
running
there's any.
quarterback, invested in the offensive line,
I
and they
know.
didn't sign a receiver. Everything they did in the offseason points to what they want to do.
I mean,
They'll build the receiving room next year probably to make it a little more versatile, but year one, it just seems like that's the direction they're going to go, and it's the best direction for them to do, right? I mean, that's how you build like the foundation of a football team. Once you have the running game down, that's when you can kind of branch out and try to build like a prolific passing attack. I like what they're doing, and I think they're making it pretty clear as to what they want to do. It's just going to come down to execution. Is Tanner Engstrand a good offensive coordinator? We don't know. It seems like he is, but is he going to tailor an offense for the personnel that he has? We'll see. But I would be shocked if they come out and it's like a pass heavy offense with a quarterback that has questionable throwing ability. The only definite with Justin Fields is his running ability, right? And that's the direction they went. They could have gotten Kirk Cousins maybe if they wanted to do that, in my opinion.
all right. Well, let's start it off with Brees. I mean, is it unfair to say that he has 1,100 yards and 500 receiving yards? I just
No,
No.
I don't think so at all. I think if you just we kind of went over this when we did his props, but if you simply just back into it, right? Let's say the most rushing attempts he's had in the season is 223. That was 2 years ago, right? Do you think it's if he stays healthy, that he can get 250 carries? I would absolutely think so, right? That's 40 more than last year when they did not even throw the ball. When all they did was throw the ball, right? So I'd say bare minimum he's going to get 250 carries, right? Can he get to 4.5 yards a carry again? That's being conservative, right? I mean, his rookie year he had 5.8 yards a carry,
That's insane.
Yeah, that's a lot.
which is crazy, right? So if he can get to just simply again 250 carries at 4.5 yards a carry, that's 1,125 yards right there, right? So, and I think that's being conservative. Now, if you talk about his receiving, I mean, last year he had 57 catches for 483 yards. In 2023, again, peak year to date, he had 76 catches for almost 600 yards. So, being conservative again, is it something in the middle? Is it 65 catches for 500 yards? Yeah, like that seems like a very reasonable stat line for him. I think the big thing for him is really the touchdowns. I mean, he's never had over 5 rushing touchdowns. He's never had over 9 touchdowns in a season. That's going to be. Is that going to go up, or is Justin Fields going to be more of that in the red zone as well? Right.
That's what I was going to say.
I don't see it going up dramatically because, again, I think to what I just said, Justin Fields is going to take some of those red zone touchdowns. But yeah, it feels even conservative saying 250 carries, 1,100 yards, 500 receiving yards. But man, if he doesn't get that, then either they're a true committee and one of the running backs is totally broken out into like a legit, pass the baton for the following year, or he just sucks. And which I just don't see. I really want to just blame last year mostly on the coaching and the scheme, and it just feels like you almost everything offensively you have to throw away last year because of what a shit show it was. But yeah, I mean if he doesn't have those numbers, that's a bigger problem.
And so, did you give an official prediction, Tony, or do you want to just move on to Braylon? I didn't hear you say.
I think I'll go 1,500 total again.
Okay,
1,500.
Now, Braylon last year had 92 rushes, 334, 2 touchdowns. I kind of see this season being more of the same for him. Honestly, I think they're going to use some short yardage situation. I think Fields is going to be more of that running back too, technically. I think he lands right in that like 90 rushes, maybe 300 to 400 yards. A few touchdowns. I think he'll have 3 or 4.
This is a really tough one to say because it all factors into. Look, he has the most potential in this committee, right? I liked Braylon Allen a lot coming out of college. I would like to think that his carries probably stay around the same. Maybe let's call it 100. Maybe he gets 120, but you really need to see that average go up. I mean, he averaged 3.6 yards a carry, right? So that has to be at least 4 in that regard. So, I mean, again, if you're talking 125 carries can he get to 4.2 yards, which still is kind of crappy, but like better than last year, right? So, I'm just doing the math because I can't do it off the top of my head, but that's like 525 yards rushing, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like where all these yards getting allocated now, because if we're saying Fields is going to be, the second rusher,
one, right? Fields is the big one because
we're going to run for 30,000 yards next year.
Fields is the big one, right? Because he could have anywhere between. I mean, he's had if they go full gung ho running offense, like when Fields was on the Bears, like he rushed for over 1,000 yards in a season. So is that? I don't think Fields is going to crack 1,000 yards rushing. That would be crazy.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But can you get? Let's put it this way: can you get 1,000 yards rushing combined from Braylon Allen and Justin Fields?
Yeah,
that's a good way to put
I think
it.
so. Yes,
right.
I think you'll get like 600 from Fields and 450 from Braylon Allen. I think that's what I'm thinking. Braylon will get like 100 carries. He's not. Again, he's a short yardage guy. I don't. He doesn't have like that like burst ability that Brees does when he hits the hole and he's just out. I think he's like that like bruiser, kind of like he almost reminds me of like Brandon Jacobs, but like not as good. At least what I saw last year. But dude, he was 20 last year.
Young guy, man.
He's so young, and I loved him coming out of
just
school.
To back into it a little bit, if they were to be a top 5 rushing team, right, they would need roughly 2,500 yards combined rushing from the entire team.
So you're looking at
what am I looking at? You said
no. I said that. Then you're looking at Brees
Right.
Hall over 1,000. You're looking at Braylon and Justin Fields, like you said, over 1,000.
Exactly.
So and where are the other 500 coming from? Isaiah Davis,
end arounds, Isaiah Davis. I mean,
the Ravens had 554 attempts last year for 3,100 yards. The Eagles had 621 attempts for 3,000 yards. I mean, again, you're talking about Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and Saquon. So different story, right? But after that, the Commanders had 2,600 yards on 526 attempts. The Bucs had 2,500 yards. So, like, I'm not saying crack 3,000 yards. Those are two of the best teams in the league. But if they want to be a top 5 rushing attack, if they want to be the Lions, right, they need to have over 500 attempts, and they need to have around 2,400 to 2,500 yards. So if you back into it, right, Brees needs to get 300, 275 to 300 attempts, right? Braylon Allen's got to get at least 100, and Justin Fields has to have his worth. And if you get over 1,000 between those guys, between Braylon, Dave, even let's add Davis into the mix. If you can get 1,200 out of those guys, and you can get 1,200 out of Brees, you're right there.
Last year, Davis had 30 rushes for 174 yards. You likely see it go up a little bit.
That sounds pretty good, no?
Yeah, 10 yards per game, I think he had, which is not great, but I mean, overall,
he is burst, dude. I don't mind him. He's more burst than I thought he did.
They gave him more burn at the end of the season, so hopefully this year we see him in certain situations. I like you said, he does have like that kind of not fully.
If you look at it this way, and again, still really conservative, right? 300 yards from Isaiah Davis, 500 yards from Braylon Allen, 700 yards from Justin Fields. Right there, that's 1,500 yards, right? And then you just get, and if Brees gets the rest, depending on what he does, you're well in that range of over 2,400 yards rushing. You're a top rushing attacker.
All right. I don't really know how much there is to talk about running backs. I mean, we've covered it all here.
We ran the ball here.
we ran the ball. A lot of Justin Fields talk. I was trying to avoid it, but it's almost inevitable, especially when you're talking about offensive line. And he's going to be, and I was just thinking about this before. I don't want to. I'm usually not this optimistic, but like, why the hell not this team? Like, Justin Fields may not be the best passer, but in terms of the running game, he's one of probably the most in the past 10 years, along with like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, one of the more prolific running quarterbacks in the league. Why can't this team be a top 5 rushing attack in the league with pre-ranked 9th offensive line in the league? So I think there's a really good chance.
Point being is they have to.
Yeah, you're right.
If we want to have a good season, that's how they built this identity for at least this year. It's something that, if Aaron Glenn's bringing the Detroit mentality over as a foundation over there, they drafted the players around him. I mean, Mason Taylor's a very good, an adequate run blocker. Armand Membu is more of a run blocker right now than a pass blocker. Everything has been built around them having that they're going to run the shit out of the ball this year. So if they don't have a good running game, they're going to win like 3 games. If they have a good running game and it really is like over the top and it's like a really elite rushing attack and we get the numbers that we've just talked about, then you can start having that, okay, is this that 7, 8, 9 win team that like we've kind of like are trying to manifest?
I hope. And if you're listening, my fingers are crossed, and if you're watching, you just saw it. So let's lay out the next couple of weeks. We got training camp starting the 22nd. Rookies report the 19th, so that's 2 weeks until literally less than 2 weeks until training camp starts. Try to get the docuseries stuff done before then, and then we are just full on ahead into the season essentially once training camp
That's gonna be
starts.
fun.
I know.
It's gonna
I'm
be
really
fun
looking forward
with
to
that
it.
starting, especially on
Like
here, man. We're like, this is gonna be great.
Yeah, we started this thing in the winter, and building it up and getting it to this point. It's going to be fun to actually have the podcast heading into the season. Something we didn't have last year was just on the spaces. So, again, we appreciate all the support as always at NYJ_Vultures Row on Twitter, TikTok, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. It's all great. Any closing thoughts from you fellas?
Run it.
Run the ball. All right, folks.
Yeah.
We will see you next week. Oh, Pat.
Nope,
Anything?
that's it. Run the shit out of the ball, man.
Run the ball. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Go Jets.